Hey guys, this is Jason Morris with Real Estate Agents That Really Work. And guys, I have agents all the time ask me about doing leases and doing property management to try to subsidize their income selling real estate. And I'll tell you, I've had a long career. Gosh, I've done a lot of stuff. I mean, to be honest with you, I think I've done about everything that you can do in the real estate business to a certain extent. At least in my area. Uh, um, so I wanted to tell you guys my experience doing property management and tell you I made a list. It was going to be like 10, then it was 20, the next thing I know it was 30, and then I ended up with the top 50 craziest stories from my property management experience. So here they are. I thought I would tell you guys. Maybe you guys would get a kick out of some of these things. Hey, look, I developed my app, Follow Up Master. If you guys want a free trial of it, just go to jasonmorrisfollowupmaster.com. You get a free 30-day trial. Try it out. See, tell me what you like, tell me what you don't like, and I'm going to update it based on user feedback. So here we go. Number one, I evicted 8 people one month because somehow I got in a car accident, totaled out the car I was driving. I had to buy a new car. And these people literally thought that they were paying my car payment. They quit paying rent because they were upset because I bought a new car. And it was the craziest thing. The first one started, I was going over to the house to collect some rent. I was expecting to collect all of their rent. I show up, the lady gives me like $100 and tells me I have to talk to her husband about getting the rest. He calls me later, raises hell with me on the phone about the new car I was driving. It was the most insane thing I'd ever seen. And I ended up evicting 8 people out of the same neighborhood that same month because I bought a new car. Number two, I had like this lady. She was probably 60 years old, and she just constantly called for repair requests. So after like 5 or 6 in one week, finally I said, "Man, this is getting extreme." And I was talking to the guy that was doing maintenance stuff for me at the time, and I was going, hey, look, man, I got to go over there with you. I mean, I was a third party management company. I had to justify this stuff to the clients I was working for. So and it was getting extreme. So I go over there, I knock on the door, I hear her on the inside. She goes, "Come on in." So he opens up the door, and next thing you know, she's sitting there on the couch in this little nighty lingerie thing, holding one of her adult toys, and she sees me, and anyway, I see her, and I'm like, "Oh shit, I'm definitely a third wheel here in this situation." So I looked at both of them, and I was like, "I got to go." And she jumps up, takes her adult toy, sits it on the kitchen cabinet, tells us how she doesn't hardly have anything on and she needs to go put on more clothes. And anyway, I went ahead and left. I didn't have any more problems with her calling for repairs and stuff. So number three, I ran into this guy, and man, he was just you meet those people sometimes, and he was just so annoying. I mean, it was just nonstop. And literally his neighbors were calling me complaining about him and stuff. And he gets in a fight with this kid. This kid was like probably 18, 19 years old. The kid just beats his ass, just beats the hell out of him. In the middle of the fight, the guy gets hit in the mouth, and his dentures come out of his mouth, land on the ground. The kid runs over, stomps on his dentures, busts them all up. And I get a call. I get a call later on that afternoon, telling me all about the fight and everything. And he got upset. I think I ended up evicting him. It's been a long time ago, but I think I ended up evicting him over this. I know I ended up evicting him eventually, but he thought that I should replace his dentures. I had nothing to do with the whole situation. I just turned out I rented out to both of them, but the fight had nothing to do with me. So number four, I had a tenant stealing electricity from a neighbor. The neighbor finds out about the whole thing. He sees it. Basically, what the guy done was he took and put two mail ends on a drop cord. so he could plug one into his outlet and then run the other in and plug it into another outlet, and basically it would put electricity on that circuit in the house. So that's what he was doing. The neighbor sees it, goes behind his goes behind it, cuts the electric cord, and waits behind the house for the guy with a metal pipe. And as soon as the guy walks around the corner, the guy just like beats the hell out of him with a metal pipe. It's craziest situation. Fortunately, nobody asked me to pay for anything, and the guy was reported to the police, and he ended up getting fined like $1,000 for stealing electricity or something like that. It was kind of insane. Number five, I had a guy. I was walking around in this condo community. The guy sees me and he waves at me and he's like, "Hey man, I need to pay my rent. Why don't you come on over?" And I was kind of friendly with a lot of these tenants and stuff. So I going up to his unit. He's going and getting me the money out of his bedroom or wherever it was, and I look over in the living room and he's got marijuana plants that are like 5, 6 feet high. I personally I didn't know the guy that big, and I look at him and I'm like, "Hey, I'm your landlord." He's going, "No, no, it's cool." And I was kind of going, "Man, it's kind of not." But anyway, like 2 or 3 days later, um, the guy decides he's going to pull these massive marijuana plants out on the porch to get some sun. The neighbor calls the police on him. They come, they confiscate all of his marijuana and put him in jail. But number six, I had this woman we were renting to mail me a pair of her panties, um, with a letter saying that the dryer burned them up and she wanted $80 a pair taken off of her rent. And man, that was a crazy one. We ended up evicting this lady over burned up pairs of panties. Number seven, I showed up to show a condo one day, and I could hear the person talking on the phone. I couldn't really tell, if it was a man or a woman or what it was. But anyway, I show up to meet the prospective renter, and it's like a guy. He's like a 6.5 foot tall black guy. Looks like he's built like a football player, and he's dressed like a woman. As soon as I get out of the car, I see him, and I mean, this was the sight. I mean, he is an enormous guy. He's got like on a mini skirt, and the first thing he does is ask me, "What could we trade for rent?" Um, man, it was quite an interesting situation. I had to explain quickly, "Hey, we don't do trades," and get back in the car. So number eight, when I was doing leases and property management stuff, I saw the whole bath salts thing run rampant in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. I didn't know what they were. I had this guy tell me, he's like, "Yeah, yeah, they've been, my neighbors have been doing bath salts and they've been up and they've been talking about all kind of crazy stuff." And then the next thing I know, like on the news, I think it happened in Florida. There was some guy high on bath salts. He ate another guy's face off, and I saw all that crazy stuff. I evicted so many people because of that. It was just a synthetic drug that they were selling at gas stations. Number nine, I had probably a 350-pound guy um, fight with me over paying rent. We end up evicting the guy, and the guy pooped everywhere. I mean, everywhere, even in the microwave. I don't know what this guy done, but we go in the house, and he literally shit all over the house. Craziest stuff I'd ever seen, man. It was hard as hell to get somebody in there to clean the whole thing up. Number 10, I had a tenant call me. And this guy, I will never forget him. This guy had like the craziest, worst luck that you could ever possibly have. He called me to tell me that his girlfriend was going to call me later that day because he got drunk and they got in a fight and she went to bed and he went upstairs and he peed on her. And then when she got up, she's mad, of course. So she jumps up, she's fighting him, she's going crazy and stuff. And then he says she accidentally fell down the stairs. So, like an hour later, I get this crazy call from her telling me how she wants off the lease. Because I told him, I said, "Hey, man, she's going to have to call me. If she wants off the lease and you want her off the lease or whatever, you guys are going to have to mutually agree. And, we'll have to we'll have to sign a piece of paper, to add an addendum. So, sure enough, like 2 hours later, she called me, told me the same story. She's like, "Yeah, we got in a fight, and I went to bed, and he peed on my head and threw me down the stairs." Craziest stuff. Craziest stuff I'd ever seen. So, number 11, I had this guy. He was I managed these properties that were over near the college, and this kid was a college student, and he was sitting on the porch. I met him. I actually collected his rent. You tell he'd been drinking heavily that day. Well, apparently, after I left, there was another guy walking around the neighborhood, just really, and he was drunk too, and he was talking shit and saying something about nobody can beat my ass. And this kid I ran into went down, beat the hell out of this guy. Guy goes in the house, gets a gun, comes back, shoots the tenant I was renting to in the leg. The guy has an attorney contact me, telling me that we should be responsible for paying his rent until he recovered from the gunshot. And somehow or another, this was my fault. Anyway, it ended up getting resolved. The kid ended up moving, and it was just a crazy, crazy situation. So, number 12, during the course of the time I was doing property management and doing leases, I had 3 full out hostage situations, hostage negotiations complete with police standoff and SWAT team. It was the most insane thing that I'd ever had to deal with. I thought that stuff only really happened in the movies. It turned out that it's actually kind of common apparently. But number 12, I ran into this woman, and this woman was, and she's probably one of the larger women that I've ever seen, like in person, like up and moving around and stuff. Absent from like seeing these crazy stuff on the internet and stuff. But she was so big that the stairs inside the apartment that I was renting to her, they would just break. She'd walk on the stair treads, and she was just wearing them out. She was basically, her body weight was breaking the stair treads, and then she was fighting me constantly, telling me how the stairs wasn't built well. And this woman was probably like, the stairs, I think they were built fine. They just wasn't built for, you know, I think she must have been jumping up and down on them, but she was probably 500 pounds plus. It was the most insane thing. So I'd go over there to look at the stairs to figure out what we need to do to fix them, or meet somebody, maintenance person over there to deal with it. And then this woman would fight and argue with me literally out in the parking lot. It's the most insane thing ever. So number 13, rented this guy, and he was from, there was a mental health, I inherited this guy from another management company that I owner switched management companies, and I ended up with this guy, and there was a mental health program that was similar to Section 8 that was a 2-year program. So this guy, he was on the program, and to look at him and stuff and talk to him for a few minutes, he looked normal, but then, you spend 5 minutes with him and you figured out that he wasn't really normal. So the program ends up ending, and we end up having to evict him because he didn't do the stuff he was supposed to. So they quit paying his rent. So we worked with him all we could. Then we ended up having to evict. And during the eviction, the guy tried to spray me with a can of cooking spray. But number 14, I had this guy I was renting to. Next thing you know, guy moves in his girlfriend. So and they lived there for a little while, and they started having some problems paying rent and stuff. Okay, so they're having problems paying rent, so they move in a roommate. So after the roommate moves in, the girlfriend and boyfriend fight, and the girl literally moves out of the boyfriend's room right down the hall into the roommate's room. They refuse to give him rent. We end up having to file eviction on him. The girlfriend or the ex-girlfriend and the new roommate call and ask me if we could just keep renting the place after I kicked her ex-boyfriend out. Most, just insane stories. So number 15. Okay, the same guy that had moved in the roommate that his girlfriend broke up with him for. So we end up I end up going to the eviction. The guy doesn't show up. I'm leaving the eviction. The guy had walked like 5 miles to the magistrate's office. And I end up, I feel sorry for him. I roll down the window and I'm like, hey man, the eviction's over, And he goes, what happened? I said, well, you're behind on rent significantly. I mean, we kicked you out. And anyway, me being a nice guy, I ended up having to give the guy a ride back home to his place so he could get his stuff out and move. So, number 16, I was renting this three-story townhouse. We ended up evicting this couple that they were probably, they were a big couple. They were probably 400 or 500 pounds each. We go into the place after the eviction. We go into the place. The place was literally packed full. I mean, it was everywhere. It was just adult toys, porn, everything clear. All of the adult toys clearly used. I got these two guys, cleaning the place out. One of them, I told him after I seen everything, I went and got him some gloves, or went and got him some different gloves than what they had. I come back, and man, one of the guys had bagged up all the adult toys, put them in a bag, asked me if he could have them all. And so, whatever you're into, I don't care. And number 17, I had this community. I was managing like 30, 40 units in it. There was literally so much sex going on in the middle of the day in the swimming pool. I thought we were going to have to put up a sign-in sheet at the pool. It was the most insane thing. There was one guy, and this was a not so great neighborhood. And literally, I was getting calls about this one guy all the time. And I mean, I didn't know what to tell the people. I was like 30 minutes away, and, hey, call the cops. Call the cops. Or eventually he's going to have to tire himself out. I don't know. But number 18, I was managing this place. It was an apartment, a small apartment complex. I had these two random people arguing over the picnic table. Somehow or another, they both said the picnic table was mine. Both of them were saying, hey, Jason said that I could do this with the table. Jason said I could do that with the table. Finally, one of them pushes the other one down and stabs him 4 times in the back with a fork. They called the police. Somebody went to jail. Crazy stuff. Number 19. I had 2 neighbors. These were people. One lived upstairs and one lived downstairs. And man, they would argue. And both of them had already called me complaining on the other one. And these were adults. In their 40s. This wasn't like 18-year-old kids. These were adults in their 40s. They got mad at each other in the yard, and they had one of them barehanded picked up dog poop and threw it on the other one. And the other one calls me, and she's like, hey, he threw dog shit on me. And I said, what did you do? And she goes, I picked up dog shit and threw it back at him. So this thing went on all afternoon to the point that we had to call the cops and get the cops into the middle of the dog shit fight. Insane stuff. Number 20. One of the things I thought I knew a lot of stuff. I grew up with my dad. My dad was a general contractor. I went on job sites and all kind of stuff with him growing up. But I learned so many crazy things while I was doing property management. I truly think that I was sheltered, and I didn't really know like how real people live. But one of the things I learned was here in South Carolina for a long time, and I guess they still do. I hadn't really paid attention. But in the gas stations, you see these little glass tubes that they were kind of cute, and they had these little roses in them. And it kind of looked like junk that you'd see at a gas station. Anyway, what people were doing were buying those roses in the glass tube, and they were using that glass tube for a crack pipe. Number 21, and this maintenance guy working for me, he calls me. He was doing some turnovers for some units. He calls me like 11 o'clock at night. Well, he calls me I had an unknown number just blowing me up 11 o'clock at night. Turns out he went to a bar, he got in a fight, got arrested. He was asking me to bail him out of jail, and fortunately for him, we owed him some money, so I ended up going and bailing him out of jail. And on the way back, he's lifting up his shirt and showing me where the police had tased him down and stuff. And anyway, I didn't care. We had to get places back ready to rent, man. But number 22, I had this tenant. The guy would repeatedly get drunk, and literally, he'd wreck his moped, and he would call me telling me these stories and tell me how he's going to be late on rent, and tell me all this crazy stuff about wrecking his moped. I mean, it's real stories. He said the moped, it just get away from him, had a little more power than what he thought. Number 23. I don't really know what was happening with this, but I rented this girl that claimed that she was a masseuse and she gave at-home massages. I don't know what was going on in her house. She paid her rent on time, but I'll tell you, I drove by, her apartment and stuff and the apartment building she was renting out, and I literally saw some days she would have a line waiting outside. She'd have people gathering at the door. So number 24, I had this one community that we rented stuff in. I had a guy on a moped that he just terrorized the place. He would just ride around shooting at people with a pellet gun. And he was, I don't know if there was something wrong with him, but people called the police. He'd never get arrested. Nobody really knew who he was. He just ride around in the apartment complex shooting at people with a pellet gun. So number 25. This is probably one of the stranger stories that I seen and actually seen or was a part of. Had this guy I ran into, and he was a really nice guy, real clean cut, real professional, drove a really nice car, and he would call me every so often because a lot of these people, I was always friendly with them, and they were friendly back. And this guy, he would just tell me all these crazy conspiracy theory stories, about FEMA camps and all the craziness that you see on TV and aliens and all kind of stuff. Guy just ends up, he was never late paying his rent. He rented for me for probably 15 months. Never late paying rent or anything. He ends up just disappearing completely. I go in his place. The whole place was just ransacked. I mean, stuff thrown all over the floor and stuff. But here was the weird thing. No personal items were gone, like pictures of family or anything. Just the place looked like it was just torn apart by somebody, and he was gone. I've never heard from him again. I don't know what happened. I don't know if he was abducted by the men in black or aliens or what. But weirdest story I had ever seen. I mean, it truly looked like something out of one of those crazy conspiracy movies or something. Number 26. I had a tenant that went through his apartment and painted Insane Clown Posse stuff all over the walls. And it was a 3-bedroom. It was a 3-bedroom condo, probably 1,500 square feet. He literally covered the whole place in ICP, Insane Clown Posse stuff. It's crazy stuff. Number 27. I rented this older guy. This guy's probably 65 years old. And I constantly had the neighbors complaining on him because he was watching porn late at night and literally had the speakers turned up. He was blaring porn, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. And you guys, if you never had to experience this, you don't know how embarrassing it is to call, a 60-year-old man and ask him to please turn down his TV because the neighbors can hear the porn playing. Number 28. I had this guy that he would not quit pooping in the swimming pool. And the first time he done it, the HOA called me, and I mean, I rented this guy, but I kind of knew him. I mean, Myrtle Beach, when you live here for a little while, it's not really that big of a place. I kind of knew the guy. He's well spoken. He did not appear that he was a guy just pooping in random places in the public. So the HOA calls me, and the guy tells me the story, and I'm going, no, there's no way this can be my tenant. And what this guy would, and so I call him up, and I'm kind of beating around the bush because I didn't want to come out and just accuse him of like, hey man, did you shit in the pool? And so I kind of beat around the bush a little bit, and he kept saying, well, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about. And I said, man, yeah, let me just ask you, He goes, I didn't. Did you shit in the pool? And he goes, no, I didn't. No, I didn't shit in the pool. And I said, well, man, HOA says they got witnesses, and he got real quiet on the phone for a minute, and he goes, oh, yeah, that was me. Ends up happening like 3 or 4 more times. I end up having to evict him over this craziness. Well, at like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I don't know if he was getting drunk or he was doing drugs. I don't know what his deal was, but he liked to go outside and shit in the pool. But number 29, I had a tenant that that he was living in this place. He and the his girlfriend's son, his girlfriend son was probably 18, 19 years old. The kid just hated him, and he'd go over there to the guy's house, and I mean this must have happened at least 3 or 4 times while I was renting to him. And he'd knock on the door and he'd put his finger over the peephole so the guy couldn't see out. And when the guy would open the door, he would just beat the hell out of him. And I mean, he would just, it happened to this guy over and over again. The kid just didn't like this guy dating his mom. And he, he showed no mercy. He beat the hell out of this guy. And he was a little guy, too. It was unbelievable. But number 30. So I go over to pick up rent one day, and I get there. I'm sitting on the guy's couch while he's going in the bedroom and stuff, getting his money together. He comes back out, and his girlfriend comes downstairs, and he starts screaming at her. He's like, "I'm here. I'm telling my landlord we're $100 late, and you're supposed to be at the strip club at 4." And he raises hell with her, talking about they're $100 behind on their rent, and she's going to get fined if she at the strip club at 4 o'clock. And that was a fun, crazy time. Number 31. So I had these tenants. They called me up because they wanted to. They needed to make some adjustments to their. They had a little attached storage unit. They needed to make some adjustments to it because they were buying a kegerator, a little refrigerator you can put a keg in. And the reason they were buying it was because they told me that it was cheaper for them. They were drinking enough beer, and then this was an older couple. They were probably in their 50s, and they were drinking enough beer that they decided it was cheaper for them to start buying beer by the keg than by the bottle. So, number 32. I had this guy that I rented to, and I don't know what happened. This was an odd story too. She the guy I was renting to, he was a medical doctor, had a great job. I drive by the house that he was in. It was just on a road that I kind of went down all the time. The guy had taken that blue painter's tape and taped up 100% of all of his windows. I mean, he taped all of the windows. It was the most insane thing I'd ever. Well, there's so many insane things, but it was crazy. So the HOA calls me. They start complaining about this guy that was, taping up his windows and stuff. So I couldn't get him on the phone and stuff. So I ended up knocking on the door. This guy had moved in like 10 Korean people with him. Nobody spoke English. Weirdest thing ever. The guy ended up moving out. I had to call him and tell him that he had to take the blue paint tape down. The HOA was all upset about it. Anyway, the guy ends up moving out over the whole situation. Number 33. We started managing this lady's property, and the lady seemed a little crazy on the phone, but I didn't really pay much attention to it at the time. I had a little office that I was working out of. Lady calls me up. She wants to come into my office and discuss a $45 repair charge that she had. And I can't remember what the charge was, but it was something that had to be done. And so we get there. The lady starts screaming at me. I'm sitting at my desk, and she's across the corner. Next thing I know, she jumps up and tries to hit me across the desk. I end up having to physically push her out of my office, lock the door, and call the police on her. And crazy time. Anyway, we ended up in the management agreement right there for that crazy nonsense. Number 34. I had this guy I rented to, and he's probably a good Samaritan. I probably wouldn't do this, but I think it's a little crazy. But he would just ride around and say he stopped at a stoplight, and there was a homeless guy standing there. I think this is across the country. You see him there standing at the stoplight with a sign, asking for money or whatever. He'd just pick him up, let him come stay at the house, whatever whatever. They just stay there for months. And these guys would basically just walk around and use the pool, use the amenities, and I would just get complaint after complaint on the whole thing. But there wasn't a whole lot you could really do as long as they stayed. I think it was under 7 days or something like that. Then there really wasn't much we could do as long as we paid rent. So number 35, I had this lady I rented to, and the lady, we're doing the lease and everything, and she's telling me about all the child support money she had. She had 3 kids, all 3 with different daddies, and she's explaining to me how the reason she done that was so that if something happened to one baby's daddy, then she would still get 2 child support checks. I was sitting there. It sounded like just an insane plan, but she she explained the whole thing to me. But number 36, had this lady call me, and what the end result was is she had a big wharf rat. It's like a rat that, well, it's a big rat is what it is. The rat crawled in the bed with her. She called me and she's telling me, Jason, I kept feeling something rubbing up between my legs, and I thought it was my husband. And anyway, she woke up, and basically she had a rat about the size of a puppy rubbing up on her legs. And she wasn't real upset about it, though. She just kind of called me to tell me about the whole thing. It was just crazy stuff. Number 37. In this one community, we had a lot of stuff we managed in, and this guy that kept calling me, he'd call me every so often. He'd get mad at his landlord, and I think what he was doing was he kept trying to negotiate rent rates. If he saw one advertised for a little less than what he was paying, I think he was going to negotiate with everybody. Guy calls me one day, and he was a nice guy. I'd met him just being in the neighborhood, showing rentals, different stuff like this. Guy calls me one day, straight up asked me. He goes, "Hey, I know you got an empty unit over there. Can I use that unit and cook meth?" Just straight up, no beating around the bush. Just asked me if he could cook meth, which was a no. Didn't even have to think about it. He was willing to cut me in when he sold the meth, but just straight up asked me. Number 38. I rented this guy. Guy seemed really nice. He was a little bit older guy. He's very well spoken. Had like 3 jobs. We ran through the same checks we did everybody at a time, and we knew lots of the same people. Well, anyway, some days he'd see me. He didn't have a car or anything, but he had I seen him at his other jobs. He cut grass and all this stuff. And some days, he'd see me in the community. This one community I was in a lot, and he'd ask me for a ride if I was heading home. And he'd say, "Hey, I want you to drop me off by my nephew's house." And I didn't really think much of it. It was on my way home. If I was leaving there going home, I didn't have any problem, giving the guy a ride. Seemed like nice enough guy. Well, wasn't long after that I realized that what was happening was he had all these jobs, but he also sold crack, and I was dropping him off at the house where they were cooking crack, and had no idea. Number 39. I had tenants that were, I don't know what you call it. I don't know if it's manufacturing LSD. Basically, they take the chemical and then they put the paper in it and they hang it up for it to dry. And basically, they had a 1-bedroom apartment that they rented from. Actually, they rented from years. And they would have sheets drying with this LSD on them and hanging up like on clotheslines. I found out the cops ended up kicking in the door and arrested him. The girl was actually, I believe she was a school teacher, it seemed like. But anyway, crazy story. And I found out about the whole thing. The cops kicked him in. Later on, that the same cop that kicked him in that basically called me about the whole thing ends up being a mortgage broker, and I do business with him selling real estate now. You never know who you're going to work with in the future, So number 40. I had a tenant that tried to outrun the police for just no apparent reason. He was just going down the road, and police got behind him, and he thought that he just step on the gas and try to outrun him real quick. So anyway, he got arrested. Ended up he was behind on like child support or something crazy, and anyway, he ended up being in jail for a while. Number 41. I had this guy. His lease ended. He moves out. Guy was just calling me, blowing me up, asking me, was there any way to get the keys back? And I mean, this was like a week after he'd moved out. I mean, place had already been re-rented. I mean, there's somebody living there and stuff. Anyway, the guy kept telling me, that he needed to get back in there. He left something. He left something. Finally, I told him, I said, hey man, if you want to get back in there, I mean, there's people living in there. If you want to go in there and you left something, I mean, we didn't see it, but you need to tell me what it was and where it was, and I'll go in there and get it for you. Turned out he had left marijuana in the air vent, and he wanted to go back in there and get it. And anyway, I don't know what happened, but we opened the air vent. Anyway, never seen it there. So I never seen it. So hopefully he forgot about it, took it with him, or somebody took it with him. Number 42. I rented a college student, and this guy, he was a nice kid. He was on an academic scholarship. I met both of his parents. They signed the lease with him. I mean, fantastic parents, or seem to be fantastic. Um, Turns out, him and his roommate were doing home invasions. What ends up happening is I get this call 4 o'clock in the morning. These kids they had went to somebody's house, kicked in the door. One of them held the people at gunpoint while the other one went around and stole a bunch of stuff. Somebody ID'd the car when they were leaving, and and they gave the police a description. The police followed them home, and they basically told the police that they had a hostage in there. So anyway, at 4 o'clock in the morning, the police are calling me, wanting to know if I can come unlock the door for them, and I was like, no way. These guys are you know we know these guys have a gun. I mean, there's no way I can do that. Anyway, I ended up calling the kid's dad, got him on the phone like 4 o'clock in the morning, got him in touch with the police officer and the kid, and he ends up negotiating to give his self up and all that stuff. So number 43, um, end up kind of inheriting these properties that this other company managed, and anyway, this one particular one, I mean, as soon as we started collecting rent and stuff, we ended up or took it over. We had to evict the guy. We go in after the eviction. The guy had lined the walls with aluminum foil, and he was basically operating a grow room in the spare bedroom, And I have friends that are excited about their Airbnb money. So number 44. The tenants weren't the only crazy people, we dealt with. Property owners were just as crazy as tenants and stuff. I mean, they were equally. Sometimes the property owner was actually crazier than the tenant. So I had this guy. He calls me up, or I call him. I don't remember which one it was, but he wants me to manage his unit. He comes, he signs paperwork with me, gives me keys and stuff. Told me he just redone the place and all this. I go over to the place to take pictures and everything. He told me he replaced the kitchen cabinets, and he had. It turned out he replaced them with those Rubbermaid shop cabinets. And he just kept going on and on about how they were really nice. I mean, literally, they look like something that would be in your garage. They weren't something that would be in your kitchen. Number 45. Um, it always amazed me. I did every spectrum. I mean, I did the low end rentals, the medium market, more market rate stuff, and then I did high end rentals. Basically, I would do anything. We would manage any properties that somebody wanted to pay us to place a tenant. So I go in this. You would not believe the number of low end rentals that I would go in where owners replaced the carpet with that green indoor outdoor stuff like you'd put on your patio. It was insane. And they talked about, oh, we replaced the carpet. You go see it, and it's like, oh, bullshit. You replaced it with that stuff that's 40 cents a square foot that you glue down. That's not carpet. So, number 46. Um, and I didn't have anything to do with this one. Thank God. This was a friend of mine asking me if I'd help him out and stuff. And so he had this tenant he kept arguing with and just kept going back and forth with. He ends up evicting the guy. The guy moves out and sold everything in the house. He stripped the place bare. He sold the appliances. He sold the kitchen cabinets. He tried to sell the air conditioner. I think he just couldn't figure out who would buy it from him. And I mean, saying the guy literally, I mean, it was just walls. It was walls and floor, no flooring or nothing. I mean, the guy stripped the place bare. Number 47. I saw a property owner. Um, the guy was calling me, and he was a friend of mine too, and he's telling me he had these rentals he's renting for like $450, $500 a month. He's telling me about this guy renting from him that was an ex NBA player, and this was I don't want to tell you guys who it is. I mean, the guy actually I heard the guy died of a drug overdose recently, but the guy had like a few years in the NBA that was really good, and then he kind of I think he had a drug problem, and then kind of went away. But the guy was hanging around the Myrtle Beach area and stuff. My buddy ends up renting to him, and he ends up having to evict an NBA player. I mean, I guess everybody has problems, but you look at this guy. I mean, this guy was signing $1 billion contracts, and he ends up getting evicted from a $450 a month rental. So, number 48. Um, I was helping this guy with managing some properties and stuff, and we end up evicting this tenant. And most of my crazy stories have to deal with evictions. The guy's out there, and the tenant, they end up having to go all the way through the eviction and set the guy's stuff out, which typically most people, they'd say, hey, I'm being evicted, and they go ahead and get their stuff and move. But for whatever reason, this guy just did not want to move, and he just kept blaming the guy he was renting from. But I mean, the thing is, if you don't pay, you can't stay. He starts arguing with the guy. There's a police officer present. The police officer ends up pulling out his taser, having to tase the guy down to the ground. The guy hits the ground, jumps back up. The officer has to tase him a second time. Anyway, that's the only time I ever seen anybody get tased during an eviction. Number 49. I ran into people like all over the Myrtle Beach area, and we're like a really transient place. And at the time, there were a lot of strip clubs here. There's not really many now, and you would not believe how many times I had people, come into my office, or I'd have to pick up rent, and they'd hand me like $800, and it'd be all in $1 bills. It was like a regular thing. I felt like I needed a bill counter for it. It was just so often. So number 50. I remember this was kind of the most shocking thing. You would see people, that they're living next door to each other, because we rented a lot of condos and stuff, that a lot of them were in the same communities. We had a lot of communities that we really targeted pretty hard. And I remember people standing outside during evictions and going, hey, can you see if so-and-so left blank, Oh, because when you sit it outside, I want it. And I mean, this was like normal. I mean, literally, this is the number one piece of advice. I mean, I hope nobody listening to this ever gets evicted from their house or business or whatever. But this is the number one piece of advice I can give you. If you get evicted, your neighbors who you think are your friends, they're going to be the ones that are literally standing outside trying to, wanting to take your stuff. So that is the top 50 craziest things I had when I was doing property management. When other agents ask me about it, and they tell me they're thinking about doing leases, and they're thinking about doing other stuff so they can get more income, or more like a steady paycheck from it. I mean, it was great when I was doing it. The market was really slow, and the market, everything was going into foreclosure. Prices were kind of spiraling down in the market, but so it was great income during the time. But man, the craziness that we had to do. I think now with the market going up, for people to get into that sort of business, especially if you listen to this whole thing, to get into that business now, I think it would be a little crazy, because there's going to be so much turnover in the next few years, because price is going up. Now the next downward trend we take, that'll be a good time to really get back into the business if you decide you want to. But I would recommend not. The key to like doing really, really well in the real estate industry is to really focus really hard on what you're doing. So guys, hey, if you like this video, this was a little different than what I've normally been doing. I wanted to tell you guys some things that, not every day is fantastic in the real estate business. But hey, if you really like this video, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Let me know if I can help you. I'm looking for agents to work with in specific markets. Hey, my book, 53 Strategies to Get More Listings, still available on Amazon. And and my app, I mentioned it at the beginning of the recording, Jason Morris, followupmaster.com. Go to there, click on the iPhone logo or the Android logo, download the app and get a free 30-day trial. And I'll talk to you guys soon. Have a great day.